Good morning, St. Augustine. Your access to the voices of top local newsmakers starts now. Here's your host, Liz Ryan.
Good morning, and thank you for tuning in to Good Morning St. Augustine. I have a very special guest, someone I'm very proud to call a friend of mine, a personal friend of mine, Mr. Rick McAllister. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Liz. How are you? It's nice to be here.
I'm so honored to have you here with me today because I really think the world of you.
I appreciate that.
You're a stand-up guy. You're an interesting person. You're multi-talented, and you have so many interesting, wonderful stories to tell. Some of them are hard to listen to because of the subject matter, but you always have something worthwhile to say.
Well, if I were running for political office, I'd want you as my PR person, so thank you.
So you're a local guy. You live here in St. Augustine.
I do. I moved here in 2021.
So where did the story of Rick McAllister begin?
Well, it actually began in California when my dad came back from World War II in the South Pacific. I was born, and we moved pretty rapidly to Cincinnati, Ohio, which is where I grew up. Went to high school there, and then my dad got transferred to Baltimore, Maryland, and we lived in Maryland while I was in college. When I graduated from college, I got drafted into the United States Army and ended up going to Vietnam in 1969. At the same time, when I graduated, I had also taken a job with a corporate financial insurance company in New York, and they held my job for me while I was in the Army. The 2 years I was committed to serve in the Army. We had the draft back then. So I went to Vietnam in 1969. I came home on Christmas Day, 1970, in my freedom flight, which was a wonderful Christmas present. And I spent the next 17 years working in and out of New York City for the financial company. Opened up an office in Charlotte, North Carolina in 77. Opened up an office in Colorado Springs in 79. And then spent 1 year in the United States House of Representatives in 1981 on a congressional assistant program, spending half the year in the Capitol and half a year in the White House during the Reagan administration. And I went back to New York, spent a couple more years with the corporation, decided it was time to go off on my own, so I retired from the corporate world. I went down to the Florida Keys into Isla Mirada. I bought part of a scuba diving business, and I taught scuba diving for 13 years down there.
You've had one of the most interesting lives of anybody I've ever met. Wow. And what a diversified background.
Well, I had always had an interest in going off and doing something on my own at some point in time. So after I returned from Washington, D.C. and got back into the corporate world, it seemed to have changed a little bit for me. And the timing seemed perfectly. I had already done my open water scuba certification, so I really liked being underwater. I had also at one point in time wanted to be a teacher, but I opted for the business world instead. So going into scuba diving gave me an opportunity to teach, and I really, really enjoyed spending those 12 years teaching people how to dive and showing them the reef and the underwater world down in the Keys. And my daughter was going through high school and entering college at the time, so it was fun for me to introduce her to that world and have her be a part of kind of that Keys ambience. And to this day, she's still an island girl. Mm-hmm. We still talk about our time in the Keys together. And then I moved up here in 2001 and pretty much retired, but spent a few years in the golf business out at World Golf Village in the pro shop out there, and then left that and started doing some of the things that I had personally wanted to do, like photography and writing and getting back involved in veteran activities. And that's where I am today.
Mm-hmm. And you do a lot of graphic design, too. You made some beautiful things for me, which I always will cherish.
I, at one time, thought about getting into the graphic design business, but that never came to fruition. So I have done a little bit on the side, and I enjoy the creative side of that.
Mm-hmm. And you're a fan of Hemingway.
Big fan.
Tell us about
fan.
Your book.
Actually, the first book I ever read that my dad gave me, I think I was 14 years old, was The Old Man and the Sea. And a little side story, I ran away from home when I was 14. I had a Vespa motor scooter, and I ran away from, I left Cincinnati on a Monday, and I made it all the way down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It took me 4 days to get down there, and when I got down there, I was ready to go home, so I turned myself into the police and had to call my dad that night, and he asked me if I was ready to come home. I said, yeah, Dad, I am. He said, okay, I'll fly down in the morning and get you. And So they put me in jail that night, and because they didn't have any other place to sit me for the evening. And I had The Old Man and the Sea with me, and I read it that night while I was in jail.
The whole book?
The whole book.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't fall asleep under the circumstances. And I became addicted to Hemingway, and I became addicted to the idea that someday I was going to have a connection with the ocean. And, of course, having gone down to the Keys and become a part of that environment fulfilled that part of that aspiration. So I'm still a big Hemingway fan to this day, and have had a glorious opportunity to spend some time at his haunts, like Spain and Key West, places like that.
And you named your book after him.
I did. I wrote a little memorabilia book called Chasing Hemingway, 5 Journeys on My Way to Here. I basically wrote it for my granddaughters so that one day they'd understand who their grandpa was. And the 5 journeys in there all have a connection with Hemingway.
Mm-hmm. And where can folks get Chasing Hemingway?
You can get it online, or if Barnes & Noble has it, you can go to the internet and request it. It's a very short book. I always tell everybody it's a nice bathroom read. It tells you a little bit about the journey that I've taken over the past X number of years.
And you're going to finish up the other 3 books?
I hope so. I'm trying. I just can't seem to finish them.
Don't start another one before you finish those.
Oh, I know. That's one of my hiccups is that I'll get so far and I say, I have a new idea. I'm gonna start this one and see if I can finish it. But I have 4 pending, and I've had 4 pending for quite a while. So
I can't help but draw parallels between your time as a scuba diver and your time in the tunnels of Vietnam. They're both situations where it's easy to panic, can be dark, can be scary. Do you feel like your time as a tunnel rat kind of prepared you psychologically for scuba diving? Maybe
a little bit. I've not done any cave diving, and I have no interest to do that. I have gone through a couple coral tunnels, and yes, I think there's probably some connection between being underwater or being dependent upon breathing, an artificial breathing apparatus, to time in the tunnels. But in all honesty, Liz, the tunnels are completely different than just about anything a person could imagine. First of all, you're in pitch dark. Mm-hmm. There's no ambient light in big parts of it. A lot of the tunnels that I was in were like 3x3, 3x5. I pretty much had to crawl through them. So you didn't really know what was at the end of wherever the tunnel was going to take you. And some of the surprises at the end of those tunnels weren't very pleasant. So I was one of the very lucky ones to have made it through that. I spent about 4 years as a tunnel rat with 101st Airborne Division over in South Vietnam. And somehow the good Lord was looking over me and allowed me to come home.
And this is one of the stories that I kind of prefaced our interview with. Some of your stories are hard to listen to because they're stories of such traumatic, terrifying situations like being a tunnel rat. Can you tell us what was involved with that?
First of all, no American was ever ordered to be a tunnel rat. All the tunnel rats were volunteer. Most of them were engineers that had been trained on explosive devices and how to destroy a structure underground. The area that I was working in at the time, again with the 101st Airborne Division, we didn't have any tunnel rats, and we didn't have any engineers that had been trained as tunnel rats. So one day my commanding officer said, "McAllister, I'm going to give you an opportunity to go back to the rear area. Would you like that?" And I said, "Well, of course. It gets me out of fighting." And I assumed I was going to have some sort of administrative job back there. And it turns out that I was being assigned as a liaison person for a special team of recon type guys, for want of a better explanation, who were monitoring the movement of North Vietnamese soldiers and equipment into the area where we were operating out of. And they suspected that there were tunnels. And I was pretty much the only one that could fit through the trap doors. They called them spider doors. And my CO asked me if I would be willing to, if they discovered a tunnel, to go in and explore and make an evaluation of what needed to be done. It was hard to say no to him and to my other brothers in combat over there, so I felt it was something I needed to do. I got very little training. There's a special assortment of equipment that you take in with you because you can't put a backpack on and make it through the tunnels. And some of the tunnels I could go in feet first if the entrances were shallow enough. And then there were some tunnels where they were so deep and you couldn't see the bottom of the entrance tunnel. I had to go in head first. They'd tie a rope around your ankle and lower you down. I had a flashlight in my hand, and I had a separate line in my hand that I had to use as signals to the three guys that were actually lowering me from the top. So one pull on the line meant I needed to stop, and so forth. And yeah, hanging upside down in the darkness challenges your awareness and your perception. But if you don't respond appropriately, you're in trouble.
How do you endure that psychologically? I can't imagine how terrifying that must be.
Well, at the time, your adrenaline kind of takes over, and that helps you get through as long as you're not claustrophobic. And I've never been claustrophobic. It's one of the reasons I think it was okay for me to go into those tunnels. I was in really good shape when I went into the Army and very flexible, so it wasn't overly challenging for me to get down into the tunnel and start crawling. It's what happened after you got down there that was the challenge. The worst part of it was the smell. The remembrance of being a tunnel rat, the strongest remembrance for me was the smell. And when I came home at night, as soon as the lights went out at night and I was getting ready to go to bed or go to sleep, that smell immediately kicked in. And that was my PTSD issue for off and on for 40 years, was having to deal with that smell. I can't tell you why it left. I don't have a rhyme or reason, but that's the only reason I can talk about it today and don't have a problem talking about it. But the smell is unlike anything I could describe to you that would make sense.
Horrible. Your resiliency amazes me. How you endured that mentally and physically is beyond me, but I'm so glad you made it out alive, because I'm grateful to have you in my life. And I just want the listeners to know I meant no disrespect by calling you a tunnel rat. That's actually the name
that
used,
is the term,
right?
Yeah, exactly. That term, I think, was actually designated by the Australians, who were the original tunnel rats. A lot of people don't even know that the Australians served over there, but they were there very early on. And the combat engineers in the Australian Army came up with the name tunnel rat, and it stuck. So if you went underground and you crawled around underground, you were a tunnel rat.
I can't even imagine. And where were you stationed in Vietnam?
I was up in I Corps, which is the northern area in South Vietnam, basically around the old provincial capital of Hue. Some military vets would understand Phu Bai. That was our rear area where the 101st was stationed out of. And we operated all the way up to the DMZ, which was the differentiation, the line that differentiated between South Vietnam and North Vietnam.
And again, you were in the Army.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what year were you in Vietnam?
1969 and 1970.
And you came home on Christmas Day?
I did. Christmas Day, 1970.
Wow.
On a TWA Freedom flight. There wasn't a dry eye on that plane when those wheels left the tarmac, and all the flight attendants had made Christmas cookies for us, and it was a special day.
Unfortunately, it's a dark chapter in United States history. Vietnam veterans were treated very poorly when they returned home. That's a national shame.
It is very unfortunate. I was told when I got back into the States, don't wear my uniform. I arrived back on the West Coast, and I needed to fly to the East Coast to go home, and I was told, don't wear your uniform. There are people out there who are going to spit on you and call you names and baby killers and stuff like that. So it was a very harsh welcome home after doing what you thought was spending 1 year serving your country in a very demanding and horrible set of circumstances. And it took pretty much 40 years before the United States got over that stigma and welcomed Vietnam vets finally with open arms.
I know I want to, and I hope everybody else does, because they should spend the rest of their lives trying to undo that damage that we did as a society to Vietnam veterans. So I'd like to say to you and to any other Vietnam vets listening, welcome home. From the bottom of my heart, welcome home, and thank you for your service.
Thanks, Liz.
And you have spent your time since then being involved in veterans organizations and veterans issues like the VFW here in St. Augustine. You're in the Honor Guard. Tell us about that.
I am. About 10 years ago, reached the point where I was ready to make a contribution back to the community. I really like St. Augustine, and I wanted to get more involved, and I wanted to get involved with the veteran community here. So I joined the VFW, and after I did that, I joined the Honor Guard unit within the VFW, and have found some very special friends and some very special time being a member of that unit. We're extremely active here in St. Augustine and St. Johns County. We have kind of three missions. Primary one is to retire American flags once they've reached the point where they can no longer fly with dignity and respect. So once a month we hold a flag retirement ceremony at the VFW. The second mission is to provide military honors for deceased veterans in a memorial service or a celebration of life, where we will fold and present a flag, have a 3-gun volley, and or play taps. And then the third mission is to participate in local, state, and national veteran and national holiday events like Veterans Day and Memorial Day and Flag Day and things like that.
Folks can take their American flags that may be worn or tattered and bring them to the VFW so they will be retired with dignity. That's
correct. We have 6 big bins at the rear of the VFW where anybody can drive in and put a flag in there. And again, on the third Saturday of every month, we'll retire those flags. The county has a substantial flag collection and recycling program under the direction of Chris Benjamin. As a matter of fact, the other day we celebrated the 20,000th flag collected by the county.
Wow, that's a lot of flags.
Oh, it's a tremendous applause for what the county's done. They have drop-off sites all around the county, libraries, the police stations, fire departments, Ace Hardware, Lowe's. You can drop off a flag that's ready to be retired in any of those spots. We will collect them prior to holding our ceremony. And last year at our post, we retired 11,600 flags.
Wow.
This year, we're already over 12,000.
Wow.
Which is a lot of flags for a relatively small county.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And, there ought to be a law. There ought to be a law. American flags have to be made in America.
Well, I think you've noticed probably on TV there are a lot more ads for flag companies manufacturing strictly in the United States. I couldn't agree with you more. Mm-hmm. I think that's the only way to buy an American flag is to buy
so many are made in China.
But when it's waving up there at the top of the pole, we give it all its due respect regardless of where it comes from. So
you're listening to Good Morning St. Augustine. I'm your host, Liz Ryan, chatting with someone I'm proud to call friend, Vietnam veteran Rick McAllister. You're also very involved with the Veterans Council, Rick, huh?
That was another one of the organizations that I decided would be appropriate to get involved with. Bill Dudley heads that up and has done a remarkable job. I don't think there's anybody else, maybe in the state of Florida, that's done so much for veterans as Bill has. And what he's accomplished here in St. Johns County is remarkable. But at the start of this year, Bill asked me if I would co-chair the Wreaths Across America program with him. This is the program, I think most people probably have heard of it, where we try to put a holiday wreath on every veteran headstone located in national cemeteries. Bill and the Veterans Council has been successful every single year that they have taken on this project of making sure that every headstone has a wreath, and I'm honored to work with him this year. So right now we're in the middle of collecting donations. There are 1,240 headstones that we need to put a wreath on. The wreaths are $17 a piece. They can go to Wreaths Across America website, and there's a connection to St. Johns County or to the St. Augustine National Cemetery, or they're welcome to contact me directly, and I'll be glad to assist them with making that donation.
So folks can donate a wreath. Are you looking for volunteers to come and actually lay the wreaths in the cemeteries?
Yes. On Saturday, December the 13th is Wreaths Across America Day at noon. So on that particular day at noon at our national cemetery, the general public will join veterans and veteran organizations to place a wreath on a headstone. So yes, the public is invited. We'd love to have people there. It's a relatively small cemetery. There's limited parking there, which is a challenge, but I would still like to extend an invitation to everybody to come join us on the 13th of December.
Do you need to sign up in advance
No.
for that? You just show up?
Just show up.
Okay. And again, the website is Wreaths Across America.
Wreaths Across America. Again, they'll have a QR code there that you can connect with and just tell them that you would like to make a donation to the St. Augustine National Cemetery, and they'll lead you through the rest of the process.
Mm-hmm. And tell me, Rick, if you would, about the flag retirement ceremony.
As I mentioned, one of the main missions for the Honor Guard at our VFW post is to retire American flags that are no longer in a condition to represent this great country. We have had such success with this in St. Johns County, and the media has picked up on it, both the local media and some national media, that we are now receiving flags from outside the county. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, a gentleman from Georgia drove down to our facility just to retire his family flag. So the thought crossed our mind that next year when we think about celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States on July 4th, that maybe we should have some special ceremony to kick that off. And we decided we would hold a very unique and special flag retirement ceremony on Flag Day, which is Sunday, June the 14th. We are in the process of collecting an American flag from all 50 states, not a new flag, but a used flag that has flown somewhere in that particular state and is ready to be retired. We are collecting one from every state and the District of Columbia. So next Flag Day, we will have a special retirement to retire those 51 flags. We'll have each flag carried up by an individual who will hand it to an Honor Guard member, and that flag will be retired. So we hope to have a nice turnout. The public is invited to that. We hope to have city and county officials there and veterans organizations represented, and we're looking to really bring some special honor to the American flag.
Now, when you say retire the flag, do you mean to burn it?
Yes.
Why are flags burned?
Well, the handling of the American flag is controlled by the Flag Code, which was adopted by Congress in 1998. It was never passed as law, but it was adopted as a guideline. And that Flag Code tells you basically what to do and what not to do with respect to the flag, when it should be flown, how it should be brought down, and included in there are the recommendations for retiring a flag. Once it gets torn, tattered, or discolored, it is not in a condition to properly represent the United States. So there are 3 authorized methods. One is to recycle it, which we pretty much don't do anymore because of the material used to manufacture the flags are not recyclable. The second method is to place a flag in a wooden box and bury it with some honor and dignity. And the third method is to burn it in a ceremony that bestows honor and respect to the flag. So we have built a special ceremonial flag retirement site at the rear of the VFW post. We have 4 retirement barrels that we light at the start of our ceremony, and then we retire each flag in one of those 4 barrels. They get very hot. They burn at about 1,300 degrees. So safety is a big issue for us. We're very conscientious of that. And it'll take us a couple hours to go through the ceremony, depending on how many flags we've collected. At the start of the ceremony, we take one of the flags that's been submitted and we raise it on the flagpole with honors. Then we'll retire the remaining 1,000 flags or whatever it is. And once we retire those flags, we pull down that flag that we raised on the pole, and that becomes the last flag that we've retired for the ceremony. So
Beautiful.
it's a really nice ceremony. Public's invited. We'll have people bring their family flags. We've engaged the youth of the community. The St. Augustine High School Junior ROTC unit has come out several times and participated with us. It's a great way for young people to learn about the respect and dignity that goes with the American flag.
So if you're ever driving by the VFW, which is on Route 1 North, and you're wondering why there's so much smoke coming out from behind the VFW, it's not on, the building's not on fire. They're retiring flags.
We have to call the fire. We don't have to, but we do call the fire department to let them know when we light the barrels, when we're practicing for a 3-gun volley and we're firing our weapons. We have to call the police to let them know that some of the neighbors may hear some shots that they would question. So we try to be very respectful when we do this, but that's a part of the process. So.
Mm-hmm. And you're a very talented photographer. It's one of your many gifts, Rick. Tell me about the Veterans Day Photography Contest.
Well, delving back into my background, and you're right, I spent a few years as a professional photographer and I was in one of the galleries down on Avalise Street, had a great time doing that. So I thought one of the ways to remember veterans might be to have a photography contest associated with Veterans Day. So we started one. I solicited the help of the St. Augustine Camera Club, which I used to be a member of, and the St. John's Cultural Council, which has Art in Public Places program. And we came up with the idea of having a photo contest associated with Veterans Day, with the topic being the veteran and the American flag. So the public is invited to submit entries into this contest. We're still in the submission period. It will run until the end of this month. So they can send them to my email address or to the Cultural Council. And the judging will take place in October, and we'll make the announcements on Veterans Day this year. The top 5 images, along with probably about 10 honorable mention images, will become a part of the rotating display in the county offices building, specifically in the St. Johns County Health and Human Services building. They've already made arrangements for the wall space there, and they're going to have a kickoff in the latter part of November, a little reception to announce this, and we're honored that these images will become a part of the permanent display.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's exciting. There have been some really neat images submitted already, and I can't say anything about them, but people are going to be impressed with what we've received. So,
Rick, what is that email address that people can send their submissions to?
It is photoworks@aol.com with a little bit of creative spelling. It's F as in Frank, OTOWURKS@aol.com.
I could talk to you for days at a time, Rick, but unfortunately our time is dwindling. But I don't want to let you go without talking about the El Camino Trail. That is something that was so healing for you and the other veterans that you brought with you. What is the El Camino Trail?
Well, it's called the Camino de Santiago. It's a variety of pilgrimage routes that run across northern Spain, honoring the life and the death of the Apostle St. James. When I had my open heart surgery in 2012 related to Agent Orange and coronary artery disease, a friend suggested that I go over as a part of the healing process, physically and emotionally. So in 2014, I went over and I walked 500 miles by myself across northern Spain, and I had the most incredible experience, far more healing than any professional counseling services that I had been through. So I went back again in 2016, did another 500 miles. I went back again in 2018, and in 2023, I led 4 other Vietnam vets on a pilgrimage across northern Spain, which we called the Last Patrol. Mm-hmm. And we had just an absolutely spectacular time.
And one of my most treasured possessions is your book, The Last Patrol. Those pictures are so moving. Do you have any more copies of that available for people who want to?
I don't. We've talked about republishing that, so if I do get some more, I'll certainly let you know.
And I hope you do more presentations about that, like the slideshow that you did at the VFW. It was so moving.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you've had such an interesting life, and you're a fascinating person, Mr. Rick McAllister, and I'm looking forward to following your journey and seeing what's next for you. You're involved in so many different things, and thank you so much for what you do for the community and what you do for other veterans. You mean so much to so many people. And I do have to add that behind every great man is an incredible woman.
There is. Actually, there is a couple. There's my partner in life, Linda Ann Simpson, who I actually took on the 3rd journey across Spain. And then my daughter, Lauren, and my 2 wonderful granddaughters, McAllister and Lucy. So those ladies are all a fixture in my life and very, very important. And it's been a pleasure, Liz, to spend time with you and to be here with you. I've really enjoyed it.
The pleasure was all mine. And boy, this 30 minutes went by really, really fast. Rick, what do you think you'll do with the rest of your Sunday?
I might go to the beach and take a nice stroll if the rain stays away.
No scuba diving today?
No scuba diving today.
All right. Thank you so much, Rick. And we'll talk soon. Again, welcome home. Thank you for your service. And I'm proud to call you friend.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you for listening to Good Morning St. Augustine. And remember, all of our programs can be downloaded as a podcast. Go to flaglerbroadcasting.com, click on podcasts, and scroll down to Good Morning St. Augustine. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday in our beautiful, ancient, historic city.